Welcome everyone to our next installment of our Conversations with the Scientist program. Today, our program is called Citizen Science, and this, I think, will be of particular interest to many of our fossil enthusiasts because this is a way that we can all participate in science, even though maybe we haven't studied formally or we don't have a degree in geology or paleontology. There are ways that we can contribute to science just through hard work and volunteering. And so I want to welcome Karl Volkman, who I had the pleasure of meeting many years ago when he was a child. And he is not only a former employee at Stonerose, but an amazing volunteer, lifelong fossil hunter and fossil enthusiast. And I just can't wait to hear all about how he's learned, how he's helped spread knowledge, and how he's used that knowledge to really help our organization. So welcome, Karl.
Thank you for having me, Soleil. I have been a participant with Stonerose, like you say, essentially my whole life. So this is going to be a very fun time to talk about all of the different things that folks can do as citizen scientists.
Awesome. So let's start at the start. Why don't you talk about how you first heard about Stonerose and maybe tell us a story, one of your earliest memories here.
So we ended up stumbling as a family across Stonerose, essentially by accident. My father's side of the family has history in the northeast corner of the state, all the way through the Okanagan Valley and up through Republic, with my great-great-grandmother having been married briefly to a gentleman who waited bar in the 1920s in Republic. So we ended up stopping by the town just to see what it was like, to see some of this area that my dad had grown up knowing about as a children from all of the family stories. And as we were passing through, we saw a little green sign that said fossils. And we decided to stop in. That was when I was 8, and we had continued to come back almost every year after that for, I'm going on probably 35 years now of digging at Republic. I would say probably one of my funnest memories when I was a youngster digging at Republic was the year that the first couple of feathers had come down from the fossil site. And the collections manager and curator, Lisa Barksdale, at that time was extremely excited about having feathers finally found in Republic. My dad had an odd sense of humor, so he thought it would be funny to take a blank piece of shale back to the campground where we were staying. And he proceeded to find a duck feather, tape it to the rock, and the next afternoon when we came down from digging, he very, very joyfully told Lisa that we had found a feather. She got super excited, and then he presented her with this duck feather taped to a piece of shale. And she got this very confused look because she was born and raised German, and so his sense of humor was very much over her head on what is going on and where is this feather that you told me about. It was super funny, but it was one of the first real big icebreakers that we had with Lisa.
Oh, I love that story. That's fabulous. So, you know, when folks come and dig at Stonerose, if they find something rare or unique, or maybe it's something that currently is being studied, we do retain that fossil. And I know that over the years, you found probably many things that we retained and added to the collections. Maybe you could talk about when you first donated a fossil and what that experience felt like for you. I don't know if you remember how old you were, but I think you were pretty young.
I was young. The first Stonerose Finder letter that I got, I received in 1992. So to give perspective, I was about 10 years old at that point. And When I received the letter, I had essentially totally forgotten that they had taken the fossil that they had taken. But in late fall of that year, we got the beige envelope with a Stonerose letterhead on it, telling me that the center had kept a fossil wing from me. And the paleontologist from the Burke Museum, Wes Weir, had taken a look at it and identified it as a beetle wing, and it was in the collections for further study. And that was probably one of the biggest things that really cemented my joy of finding fossils, but not just finding fossils for me, finding fossils that were important and for people to look at later on and study and possibly do more with. It was a super fun experience the first time, and it became one of my family's and my major goals every year, was to see how many things we could find that the center wanted to keep. And then we would look forward to the letters at the end of the season, somewhere in between October and November, to come in the mail and tell me what all I had found and the photocopy of the fossils, so we could remember, oh, I remember finding that. I don't remember having them keep that, but they kept that as well. And these things are going to be looked at possibly by a scientist from Alberta or a scientist from Arizona. And the fun excitement of knowing that more information would come from those fossils.
It's really a key for how we as citizens practicing this science can contribute. It's really amazing when we get diggers in at the center, and if they're there for the first time, and we explain how to find fossils and that we'll identify them and that we may need to retain them, many initial reactions are negative. Like, wait a minute, I worked really hard to get this. Why are you taking it from me? And yet, once they understand the importance of the process, I think most people do tend to turn over with their attitude. And like, you are a beautiful example of not only understanding and embracing that, but championing it and really wanting to contribute, and even having that goal of like, let's find something rare, let's find something they need. I mean, I love that about you, Karl. It's so cool.
Yeah, one of the funnest aspects, and what really does end up interesting a lot of the folks when they find out about the Stonerose policy, is the fact that Stonerose actively keeps both a digital copy of their name with that fossil and a physical copy with their name with that fossil in perpetuity for as long as that fossil is around. If it ever gets removed from the collections, there's the opportunity for them to get it back. Whenever fossils are sent out for study, then the information of who found it is sent with that fossil, so the researchers know as well. And Stonerose does actively encourage that researchers acknowledge at least that the fossil was found by the finder, and occasionally things get named after the folks that find them. So it's always that possibility of hitting that jackpot with finding something that's not only kept, but turns out to be new and exciting and then named.
Oh yeah, it's so exciting, and it is a long process. So patience is definitely key there as well. So Karl, I know that you actually came to work for us close to 20 years ago in collections, and a piece of that knowledge to be prepared to work with collections is fossil identification. So without a formal training, tell us a little bit about how you came to learn how to identify plant fossils, and describe the work with collections, if you would, please.
Yes. A lot of my training essentially was what a lot of people would consider on-the-job training. So by the time I actually came to work with the collections at Stonerose, I was in my early 20s. So I had already been digging at the fossil site for probably close to 11 years at that point. And a lot of my innate knowledge came from summer trips digging at the center, looking at the fossils, listening to the staff members as they would go through and talk me through why something was what they had identified it as. And then as I got into my high school years, I was privileged enough to be able to join Wes Weir on a number of his collecting weekend seminars. So I got a lot of firsthand personal interaction with Wes as he was making identifications and talking about why something was important and why it was, say, an alder leaf versus a sassafras leaf, and what to look for in a fly wing instead of being a beetle wing. So much of that was just personal osmosis over the years of digging at the center and then just listening to what everybody told me when they were talking about the fossils.
I'm going to jump in here for just a second and explain for those who don't know who Wes Weir is. We consider him the father of Stonerose, and he himself was an artist and a citizen scientist. So he was not necessarily a professional paleobotanist, yet he contributed so much to this work. So,
yeah, thank
you for mentioning Wes.
You're welcome. Yeah, Wes's formal training was in music theory. That's what he got his degree in, and then he spent a lot of his early years working with famous Northwest artists. And it wasn't until later in life when he started collecting petrified wood that he got interested into the fossils. But he is one of the founders of Stonerose, and he was so adamant about including everybody in fossil collecting, from professional scientists all the way down to the new young 8-year-olds that are out digging fossils for the first time with their family and just enjoying hitting rocks with hammers.
Yeah. Awesome. All right. So if you don't mind talking a little bit about your work with collections, tell us what that's like.
Collections, when I was at Stonerose, my job was split into 2 parts. I was the person that was in charge of identification for the fossils that people found. So I was one of the main people that people would come to and ask, what did I find? And I would identify what they had found and be that person who made that judgment call of, this fossil is something fun and unique, but you can keep it, or this fossil is something fun and unique, and we would like to keep it. And as my job progressed, I would also do the staff training every year to bring our new volunteers and our student volunteers into the loop of what to look for and what specific things to see for the different fossils and what they would be looking for in a keep or a not keep. And then once we kept things, I would be the one that would create the unique identification number for that fossil and place it into the collections, and then shepherd it through the process if a researcher wanted to take it out on loan and study it further.
And so for other fossil enthusiasts and citizen scientists out there, if you're interested in volunteering, maybe it might seem remedial to you and I, Karl, but maybe just explain, like, quite literally how you accession. You have to clean it and trim it, and you literally like put a number on it. Like, just walk us through briefly what the literal accession process is.
Anytime we have a new fossil is kept by Stonerose, the first thing that happens most often is that fossil will be cleaned up a little bit more. So if you have a partial leaf and a little bit still under the rock, a staff member will take a small hammer and chisel and just carefully chisel away at that upper layer of rock to try to get more of it free. Many of the fossils that we keep are broken in 1 or more pieces. So glue is probably one of the most important tools that Stonerose has. Out of all of the many scientific tools that are in our possession, glue is probably the most important thing. After we've cleaned it up, and we actually have special trimmers that we can use to make the piece of rock smaller, so it doesn't take up a lot of room if we have a little tiny fossil on a larger piece of rock. We'll take it and we will create that unique identification number, and then we will actually take scrapbooking pens, little micro felt nib pens, and we will write that rock identification number directly onto the rock, so that if that rock ever gets separated from its identification information in the little cardboard box that it lives in, we can look at that information up and still have the copy of that information. Then with that number, we actually will go through and using our customized inventory database created by longtime volunteer, who is also a citizen volunteer, Jana Hartford, we will enter that into the inventory database so that it has a record of who found it, what day it was found on, what year it was found on, who made the initial identification of the fossil. If another identification is given to that fossil later by a visiting researcher or another staff member, there is an update form that will actually create a new layer to that record saying, here was the initial identification, and then we have another identification made by Soleil at a later date saying it's actually possibly this. When we send the fossils out on loan, there is a special flag that goes into the system to mark that fossil as being on loan to that researcher for an X amount of time. And when it comes back, we can take it off and use the system to mark whether it was the holotype specimen, the specimen that this new species was described from, or if it was just, say, figured in the publication, but not marked as a specific specimen.
Awesome. That's very informative. Thank you. And you mentioned loaning specimens out to researchers, and that does happen a lot. But additionally, our fossil site, for those of you who have never visited us, is open actually for public digging. We're open May through October. It's too cold on the other 6 months of the year. But not only do we host individuals, families, field trips that come out, we actually do host scientists who come. And if memory serves, Karl, I believe you were involved in one of the stratigraphic studies that was performed at Boot Hill. Do you want to talk about that and like what that was like for you?
I was in the late 1990s and very early 2000. A coalition of researchers from the Denver Museum and the Smithsonian Institute performed what they call a stratigraphic dig. And for that process, they actually sectioned off a about 3 feet segmented section of shale. And they took out these 3-foot segments. I think it was about 6 feet total of rock they dug down through. And using a pool of volunteers, including citizen scientists like me, they actually had us go through and we would split down every single piece of shale as much as we could. And then anything that was possibly identifiable as a fossil, even down to we were able to identify it as a piece of bark or a twig, or it's an insect leg. All of it was kept so that they were able to go through and eventually publish a study on the change in the fossil, essentially the biota, the plants and animals of the site between the top of that layer and the bottom of that layer.
I think maybe volunteering at one of those stratigraphic studies must be one of the most exciting things. I also had the pleasure of participating, and just great memories all around, meeting people, making friends, learning about fossils, having fun, all the good things. So thank you for that story. When people do come in and dig and we identify their finds, like you were talking about, we provide them with a list of the most common fossils found here in Republic. And then we actually will circle that fossil that they found and we'll number it on their rock. So when they get home, they don't have to memorize everything. They get home and they say, oh yeah, this one is that. And they're looking at their sheet. But often it's, Latin terminology, this kind of botanical terminology that's not so easy to grasp. And so it's common that people are going to go home and start Googling, I want to learn more about this. What is this type of tree? Does it still live? Like, people are interested and they want to learn more. And often that takes them to Wikipedia. So we have really leaned on you quite hard in this area, because really it's a very unique thing to curate Wikipedia. So I'd love to hear about maybe what inspired you initially to get into that realm, and kind of what's your process for keeping it fresh and up to date, because there's always stuff being discovered. Stuff is changing a lot. So could you talk a little bit about Wikipedia and your role and how that works?
For sure. One of the nice things about Wikipedia is it is open to everybody, just like Stonerose is, for adding knowledge. Wikipedia has a very structured organization to what it will allow in, and what it considers as something that's notable and worth including in the encyclopedia. One of Wikipedia's big tenets is that Wikipedia inherently considers all described organisms, plants, animals, bacteria, they're all inherently notable. So that was one of the things that I was thinking about and looking at in my off time when I was working at Stonerose. Was we at the center know all about these fossils. We know what it means when we say you have a Betula leopoldae leaf. But for the folks that are coming in and looking at it, and they know that we told them this Latin name, we may have mentioned that it was a birch leaf, but beyond that, they don't know any more than that. So I was inspired to start going through and reading through the actual papers on these different things that are described from Republic, and in a larger sense described from all of the fossil sites that Republic is related to. Republic's the southernmost in a string of lakes that extend over 1,000 kilometers into north central British Columbia, and they form a very unique picture of what upland mountain life was like during one of the hottest periods in Earth's recent history. So I started to go through and read these articles and then write down what I gleaned out of the articles in a more understandable form for folks who don't have the access to that original single paper that talks about what this leaf is or what that insect is. So that when you go home, when you search, okay, they told me it was this thing, I'm going to type it into Google and see what it is. One of the first results now when folks try to do that is going to be a page that gives them that information on what their item is. And then it has links to what the highlands are, what the Klondike Mountain Formation is, what other sites related to it are, what information other people studying related concepts have taken from looking at our fossils as part of the larger fossil sets. So much of it is allowing all of the folks to be able to have that same knowledge access that people who work at the center just already have.
It's so amazing. I myself use it. I reference it all the time. It's a great tool. So if any of you watching are Wikipedia fans and you use that website a lot, just look at Stonerose. We're right there, thanks to Karl. It's pretty amazing. And the links, it's kind of endless. You can go down a rabbit hole of links. We heard from you about coming out to Stonerose as a kid and with your family and, working for us, both paid and unpaid volunteer work. And you keep coming back. And I'd love for you to talk about why you keep coming back And what kind of work is ongoing for you when you visit Stonerose these days?
I do keep coming back. I like to, at this point, visit Stonerose at least twice a year, once in the early spring, right before the membership weekend, and then once in late summer, early fall. And there's a couple things that keep me coming back. One is the joy of the fossils, just being able to go out one day a week, and dig fossils and see what else I can find. See if I can find new things that make all of our current researchers smile. And then part of it is coming just to see and catch up with the center staff. I'm friends with all of the center staff at this point, so I just like to catch up and find out how they're doing. And then when I'm there, what I actually spend most of my week doing is actually volunteer time working in the collections again. Let's go inside and take a look at what I have done with volunteering this year. So we have the large trimmer for trimming things down, smaller, finer tools for degaging and prepping out more of the fossil if there is any matrix still covering portions of it. And then once we have it ready to be put into the collections, we can take it over to our collections computer over here, and we'll give it a strata entry, we'll give it a collections tag in a box. And then once we have officially added it to the collections, we can take it to one of our map cases and start putting them into the cases so that when somebody comes through and wants to look for a specific fossil, we can find it very easily and simply. The other part of the process that I've been doing this week is going through and accessioning, adding to the Stonerose collections, the fossils that have been found this year. So we can see we have a lot of different things here, and to make our lives easier when we get through and start adding them to the main collections, they are grouped into different categories. So we have the large plant leaves here, we have our conifers in the next little group, we have various fish bits down at the end, and then we have flowers, fruits, and seeds over here. So this way, when it comes time to putting them into the larger main collections, we can easily take them and put them into the appropriate drawers so that they're identifiable and locatable later. I know it's a small staff at the center, and Soleil, Travis, and Andy are all working busily with all of their customer-oriented tasks and center operations tasks that I know the fossils themselves don't get a lot of love sometimes. It's hard to make that time to get down and spend a day or two just adding numbers on rocks. So that's one of my main things, is going through putting identifications to fossils that were kept between my visits, putting numbers onto those rocks so that if researchers want them, they're already in the database and ready to go when they need to be sent out. And then organizing the collections, updating. One of the big things that I will usually spend on my spring vacation doing is going through and adding all of the new papers that were published over the winter, fall, and spring while I was gone, so that the database is up to date and has the new information on the new ferns that were published this last year, and the new parasitic wasp that was identified earlier this year. And that way, that information is all up to date and ready to go when the staff need it.
That's excellent. We really value your work. I mean, I can't thank you enough, Karl. It's amazing how much you've put in, how many hours, and really with joy and with love. So it's truly priceless. We love seeing you. Can't wait to see you again. I think you're coming back next month.
I am, yes, in September.
Awesome. So in closing, maybe I wonder what you would say to maybe the young people who might be a little intimidated by the science, and to other rock hounds and fossil enthusiasts out there, maybe what could you say to them to encourage and inspire them to continue to follow this kind of life of citizen science?
I would say if you're passionate about it, then whatever time you're devoting to it is going to be important time. Um, I've devoted probably close to 35 years of my life doing this. Most of it is unpaid volunteer time, and just the joy that I've gotten out of it, and the help that it has provided to other people who are a part of the public, other scientists, are all important things. If you have a fossil site that's near you that doesn't seem to have a lot of information on it, the more that you do at that fossil site, the more information will be able to be gleaned out of it in future. Just yesterday, I read a news article about a collection of fossils that got donated to the National Museum in Scotland, that had been accumulated over a amateur collector's 90-year lifetime, collecting in the London clay, which is a flora and fauna in the Great Britain area that's just about the same age as Republic. But this collector spent his entire life collecting bird fossils. And with the donation of that private collection to the institution, they're estimating that there's at least 50 new undescribed species just in that collection. So donating time to visit Stonerose and do digging is a great way to help increase and the possibility that new and important things can be found. It's a great way to contribute to the citizen science aspect. Coming into the center and asking, I'm free. What do you have that you think I could work on for you today? Is a great way to help the center staff accomplish more with their day and to start getting more of a firsthand knowledge of what all goes into it. The center staff is always willing to talk about identifications and what makes an alderleaf an alderleaf, what makes a dragonfly wing a dragonfly wing, so that you can start building up knowledge on your own and being more comfortable while you're out digging, looking at something and going, this actually probably is something. This might not just be a weird splatter in the rock.
Oh, I love that. And we do, it's true, we do love sharing knowledge on fossil identification. We embrace our volunteers, and I can't thank you enough, Karl. And folks who want to come and dig, consider a membership with Stonerose. It's an annual membership that allows you to dig at no charge each time you come out. So if you want to frequent the fossil site, it's a great way to do it. It's affordable. More information about our hours and memberships and all that is available on our website, stonerosefossil.org. And we are still open daily for digging through the end of August. Come Labor Day weekend, then we'll be open Wednesday through Sunday through the end of October. Then the fossil site will close for the season until May 1st when we reopen. But one special perk of membership is that our members only are invited to a really special member weekend, which is right before we open to the general public for the digging season, where winter's snow and ice and freezing and thawing has weathered the rocks at the fossil site to a point where they're literally falling open in your hands. So do consider membership, and you'll get invited to these cool members only programs, including this special dig at the beginning of the season. Thank you again, Karl. I can't wait to see you when you come back. And I hope that this will encourage others to volunteer near where they live. And of course, out here at Stonerose, we would love to have you come and volunteer. So see us next time, and we'll see you here in Republic at Stonerose. Thank you, Karl.
Thank you for having me.